Part 16. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 151. Chapter 151, Meal and Meal. No one said anything in the valley for a long time. After all, it was Mrs. who took 2 steps forward and said with a smile, 1,000 taels of silver sounds like a lot, but in fact, it's not much if you divide it among different places. Let Mr. Joe worry about it. When the village chief and others come back, let's discuss it and put it together. I still need to trouble you with the drawings. The other villagers came to their senses after hearing this and quickly thanked him. Thank you, Mr. Joe. It's already a big deal for us farmers to build a house for 100 taels. It's really shocking to suddenly hear that it costs 1,000 taels. Yes, such a big valley is not comparable to our farmyard. Thank you, sir, for your trouble. Mr. Joe is a person who is addicted to technology, and he doesn't have so many twists and turns in his heart. He had also heard from Mr. Wen on the way and knew that everyone was fleeing the famine and had little money. When he heard that it would cost 1,000 taels, it was normal to be surprised and he would not be angry about it. Don't worry, everyone, I will think about it carefully, spend as little money as possible, and make it as perfect as possible. After all, this place is close to Kyoto, and it will be the rich people who come to play. The hot spring yard is too simple. Everyone nodded quickly, and Jian happened to run over and shouted, dinner is ready, you can eat. Uncle Zhao and others quickly invited Mr. Joe and a few of his men. Mr. Joe, please rest your stomach first and then get busy. There is nothing good in the mountains and wilderness, so don't dislike it. No, it's me who's causing trouble for you. Both sides were very polite, and the atmosphere became more harmonious. Everyone lives in shacks and eats on earthen stoves. There really is nothing good to entertain guests. Tao Hongying worked hard to make 2 dishes, 1 cake and 1 soup. The dish was stir-fried bacon with cabbage, fungus, and cold wild vegetables. The cake was chopped pork belly that Li Lauer bought the day before yesterday, served with dried vegetables, and baked into a pie. The soup was wild vegetable and egg soup. The combination of cabbage and fungus in black and white is pleasing to the eye. The cold wild vegetables are also full of green, sour, sweet, and refreshing. The most outstanding thing is the dried vegetable patties. The oil of the pork belly is absorbed by the dried vegetables. When you take a bite, it is soft and fragrant, slightly salty. It is perfect when paired with a bowl of egg soup. Mr. Joe and others originally thought that when people in the village said they had a simple meal, they really meant a simple meal. I didn't expect that a group of refugees living in shacks in such a desolate valley would make such delicious food to entertain them. Seeing the sorghum rice porridge and stewed cabbage in the bowls of the villagers from a distance, they became even more enthusiastic. Even without Mr. Wen's request, they would still do their best to help build the hot spring villa. Not for anything else, just for these kind and simple villagers. Jian is currently sitting in Mrs. Kui's arms, sharing a pie with Mrs. Kui. Her mouth is wet from eating, and she is always proud of my mother's good craftsmanship. Although Mr. Ye sent food and Mrs. Kui also brought some, no one in the village could bear to eat a full meal. Today's pie was baked. In addition to entertaining the guests, only half of the guests were Mrs. Kui, as well as Mrs. Li and Uncle Zhao who were injured, so they only shared 1 piece each. Of course the old people like to eat, but they feel sorry for the children even more. They just make a show and share it with the little ones. Mrs. Kui was chatting with Mrs. Li and others, and Jian wandered around while eating. There are a lot of cabbage and radishes stored in the space. In a few days, Grandma will recover from her injury and can move around freely. Then she can find an opportunity to take them out and exchange them in a nearby village. The problem today is still the fruit saplings in the space nursery. How can we take it out in a reasonable way? At this time, she missed Mr. Ye very much. If he were here, he would definitely help. After all, They had money in one hand and pills in the other, so the transaction went smoothly. Mr. Ye did not ask any questions or doubts, and his calmness made Ji-Yin subconsciously feel that he was more trustworthy than Grandma. Grandma is just an old farm lady, and she is more concerned about her safety and self-protection. But regardless of his status or experience, Mr. Ye is enough to shoulder all dangers and solve all problems for her. He is currently the best shield. It's a pity that when we got to know each other before, Mr. Ye was still a new uncle. Now he has been promoted to a marquis and is still a military lord leading troops. He is so busy that he can't be seen. She can't catch him even if she wants to. After lunch, Mr. Joe measured a lot of detailed data, took the manpower and left. The villagers thanked him one after another and sent him as far outside the valley as possible. Because they were thinking about Mr. Wen and the village chief, everyone stood there for a long time, but unfortunately no one was there. Uncle Zhao ordered everyone to continue going up the mountain to open up wasteland. No matter how irregular the hot springs in the valley were, the mountains on both sides had to be cleared out. With everyone busy cutting down trees and weeding, they had no time to worry about the 1,000 taels of silver. At dusk, there was suddenly the sound of horse hooves in the distance, getting closer and closer. Just as the villagers came down from the mountain, they immediately blocked the entrance of the valley, for fear that someone would come to grab the hot spring again. As a result, when the cavalry approached, it was Mr. Ye who jumped down. Everyone cheered and rushed forward to shout, "Master Ye is back! The Marquis is back!" Ji-Yin was squatting by the stove, warming herself by the fire with her grandma. Listening to the cheers, she was so happy that she stretched out her legs and rushed over there. Mrs. Li was afraid that her granddaughter would fall, so she wanted to catch up with her, but she stretched so hard that her shoulder wound hurt, so she could only call out family joy. "Hurry up and pick up Fu Niu, don't fall." Jie Huan strode forward, picked up her sister and lifted her directly onto her shoulders. Jiyan grabbed her brother's hair and shouted loudly, "Uncle Ye! Uncle Ye!" Mr. Ye was talking to the villagers. Hearing the delicate voice of the child, he turned around and smiled. He strode through the crowd, hugged the little girl directly, and kissed her carefully on her white and tender face. "Little girl, I miss my uncle." "Yeah, yeah," Jiyan nodded her little head vigorously, her little face full of seriousness and joy. "I miss my uncle, so much." Mr. Ye smiled heartily. "We haven't seen each other for a few days, and our Fu Niu can speak so clearly." The villagers gathered around him and sat by the fire. Mrs. Kui supported old Mrs. Li and came forward to pay her respects. Mr. Ye personally helped the old lady sit down. The old lady was worried about her son, so she told her about the incident of someone robbing the hot spring. Mr. Ye had long seen the hot springs in the distance and said, "I was at the dock just now. I just taught those two officials a lesson, and I was worried about how you would settle down here. I didn't expect that a hot spring was dug out of the deserted beach. Don't worry, no one can take it away." After hearing this, everyone seemed to have taken a reassurance and felt much safer. Mr. Ye added, "As for Mr. Wen and Lao Si, you don't have to worry. There are already many conflicts when the imperial court moves the capital. Now what's going on in our village is just an introduction. I'm afraid the imperial court has been looking forward to this day, therefore, the result must be good, and the fourth child and the others will be back tomorrow." He hugged Jiyan and sat on his lap. His expression was gentle and his tone was firm, making people unable to help but feel convinced. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 152. Chapter 152. Hug a golden thigh. Everyone was no longer worried and dispersed one after another, continuing their busy work. Chopping firewood, fetching water, helping with cooking, and it will be late at night, and patrols will be arranged. Jiyan was sniffing around in front of Mr. Ye like a puppy. Old Mrs. Lee thought she was naughty, so she wanted to pick her up. He didn't want good news, but his expression changed. Uncle Ye is injured. Everyone in the Lee family was nearby, and they gathered over immediately after hearing this. Mr. Ye, are you injured? Why didn't you say anything? Is it because you came here in a hurry? Mr. Ye quickly shook his head. Yesterday, I encountered a group of barbarians and got a cut on my back. I've already been given medicine. I guess I broke away during the horse racing today. It won't be a problem. The Li family refused, so Li Laosan and Jia Huan immediately dragged him into the shack. Sure enough, the wound on Mr. Ye's back was half a foot long. It was not a small wound at all. Some soldiers brought medicine for the wound, and everyone helped reapply the medicine and bandage it. They laid Mr. Ye down and rested in the shack, and then went to make arrangements to cook him something delicious. Mr. Ye thought for a while, and then asked 2 personal guards to go to the other side of the mountain and call over 100 guards who were temporarily staying overnight. The villagers were really surprised and distressed to see these 100 personal guards, all of them more or less bloody. While they complained that Mr. Ye was too outspoken, they mobilized their entire body to boil hot water for the guards to scrub away the blood, wash their faces and soak their feet. In short, they kept them as clean and warm as they could. The women were even more busy, preparing meals for 100 more people. Let's not say that Mr. Ye is the great benefactor of the whole village, just say that these personal guards are heroes who kill barbarians and are worthy of their generous treatment. The soldiers were not polite either. They had been looking at the hot spring for a long time, and now they wanted to jump in and take a bath to wash away the dust and blood from their bodies. So I asked if I could go in and wash myself. The villagers were stunned when they heard this, and in the end they wanted to slap themselves on the head twice. They are still busy boiling water. Isn't there a ready-made hot spring? It's a pity that they have never seen it before. They only want to use hot water to burn it, and they don't even remember that there are hot springs. Soon, the water pool under the small waterfall was simply surrounded. The soldiers jumped in like dumplings, bathing and laughing. It was so lively that it almost overturned the valley. The villagers listened from a distance, were busy, and grinned along with them. In the shack of the Li family, Mr. Ye hugged the good news and was also talking in a low voice. Seeing that there was no one around, Jiyan carefully took out a pill and motioned to Mr. Ye to take it. Mr. Ye smiled and threw it into his mouth without hesitation. When he left Li's house, the bottle of pills that Jiyan secretly stuffed into him was gone. When the soldiers were seriously injured or had a high fever, he would secretly feed them one piece. In the end, there were only a few pills left, and they were all used up that night when we rescued the villagers at the dock. Jiyan quickly poured water for him. She didn't dare to use the mugs or glasses in the space, but only used porcelain bowls, which didn't look eye-catching. Finally, she thought about it and picked a fruit and gave it to Mr. Ye to take away the bitter taste in his mouth. As expected, Mr. Ye didn't ask a single word, and gave half of the good news to one big and one small, hiding in the shack like hamsters to eat, feeling inexplicably funny and extremely happy. The good news pointed outside. In the night, the 2 mountains were bare and dark. She lay next to Mr. Ye's ear and whispered, "Uncle Ye, I want to plant fruits on the mountain." "Grow fruit?" Mr. Ye chewed up the kernels in his hand and swallowed them. He thought this was a good idea. If you plant this kind of fruit that will be eaten later, you will not have to worry about selling it. "Okay, do you need my help?" Jiyan immediately put on a smile and hugged his neck. "I'll look for fruit trees and uncle will bring them back." Mr. Ye understood and nodded her little nose with a smile. "Ghost spirit, I understand. I will ask Yeshan and Dongmei to come over tomorrow. Even if I am not here, you can ask them to help. When outsiders see it, they will naturally think it is my arrangement." Jiyan was so happy that she immediately hugged him and kissed him again and again. Uncle, it's the best. This is our secret, we must not tell anyone. Don't worry, Mr. Ye hugged the little fat girl and sighed softly, you saved my uncle's life, you can trust me. Jian didn't say anything, but suddenly felt a sore nose and felt aggrieved. As a little child, with a huge fortune, and her family being an ordinary farmer, she had to be careful and weigh everything she did, for fear of causing trouble for herself and the family. But she is also a modern soul. She has been taught for many years that everyone is equal, life is precious, and she is kind to others. It is simply engraved in her bones. Every time she saw her family and villagers suffering from hunger, and she couldn't take out so much food and supplies from the space, she felt extremely guilty. The conflicts between the two sides often put her in entanglements. No one knows how much suffering she has experienced. Mr. Ye felt the faint sadness around her and said nothing, just patted her gently, again and again. Soon, dinner was ready, and the soldiers were all clean and happy. They sat by the campfire and drank pimple soup from big bowls. It is said to be gnocchi soup, but in fact, most of the bowl is cabbage and radish. There are not many gnocchi, but the taste is very good. Having a bowl of such a hot drink, and then baking and eating the pancakes they brought with them, it felt so good in the stomach. In the Li family shack, the old lady and Mr. Li were also eating with Mr. Ye. Mr. Ye put all the small pieces of dough in the bowl to Good News, and when he raised his head, he said to Mrs. Li, "Auntie, I heard that building a hot spring village costs 1,000 taels of silver." Mrs. Li nodded, yes. Mr. Wen asked a senior official from the Ministry of Industry to check it out, and he said it would cost at least 1,000 taels of silver. Every family in the village can scrape together more than 200 taels, and our family also has 100 taels too, but still not enough. Mr. Ye said, "Auntie, let me pay out the remaining money. But this money is lent to our family, not to the village. When we make money in the future, our family can pay it back to me, but the dividends from the villa will still be it belongs to our family. In this way, it can be said to be my property, and no one will come to it." Having said that, he was probably worried that the old lady and Li Lao-san did not believe that he could protect the villa, so he added in a low voice, "The current emperor is my cousin." Mrs. Li and Mr. Li both gasped in shock. They had guessed that Mr. Ye had an unusual identity, but they never expected that he was actually related to the emperor. Jian was so happy that she wanted to dance. She was so lucky to have such a thick golden thigh. Old Mrs. Li waited for a long time before calming down. "No, Mr. Ye, you have taken the capital, and you will definitely pay dividends in the future. If it is inconvenient for you, our family can take care of it for you, you can just collect the cash." Mr. Ye shook his head and said with a smile, "Auntie, I'm not short of this little bonus. If your family is not willing to accept it, just save the money and use it as a dowry for Fu Niu in the future. This child is in love with me, and I will take it as my responsibility. She is like a biological daughter." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 153. Chapter 153 Tacit Understanding and Consensus. Mrs. Li laughed when she heard this. Fu Niu is only over a year old, why are so many people thinking about saving a dowry for her? Mrs. Kui also wanted to give Fu Niu a farm as a dowry before, but I didn't ask for it. Mr. Ye, however, rarely had a strong attitude. "Auntie, I must give this bonus to Fu Niu. You know that I am leading troops to fight against the barbarians, licking blood with my sword, and I may not be able to come back one day. It is useless for me to hold this bonus. I am happy to leave it to Fu Niu." But, the bad spirit doesn't work, the good spirit does, the bad spirit doesn't work, the good spirit. Mrs. Lee quickly turned around and vomited a few times, and glared at Mr. Ye angrily. Don't say such depressing words, be careful, God takes it seriously. We Fu Niu are the most blessed. Hug her more quickly, she will be safe and sound, prosperous and wealthy till old age. Mr. Ye couldn't help laughing. Okay, I will listen to my aunt. I have a mansion in Zindu, but I only live in it. It is too deserted. When my aunt builds a house, please bring me an extra room. I will come and stay here often. Okay, okay, that's how it should be. It's fun when the whole family lives together. Mrs. Lee happily agreed, and then told her third son, don't talk nonsense when you go out. I know, don't worry, Mother. Li Lao-san quickly responded. There was no talk all night, and he got up early the next day. Mr. Ye left 50 soldiers to help the villagers clear up the barren hills, and then he was going to Zindu, to deliver errands, and to see Mr. Wen and Li Laosi. As a result, Mr. Wen and the others came back before he could leave. The villagers threw away their work and gathered around. When they saw Mr. Wen, the village chief, Li Laosi, Li Laoer and others, everyone felt relieved. The village chief didn't know what good thing had happened to him, and his face glowed with excitement. He gathered the villagers and sat together, drank 2 large bowls of warm water in one go, and then said, don't worry, everyone. The result of this complaint to the city is great. We actually met the emperor. The emperor was very reasonable. Not only did he dismiss the county magistrate, he also rewarded us with 2,000 kilograms of grain. Moreover, the emperor said, the broken gold beach is ours to share, no one can steal it. Seriously, seriously. Your Majesty is such a good man. Uncle Village Chief, what does the emperor look like? The storyteller said that the emperor is 9 feet tall, with a face like a crown of jade, and eyes brighter than gems. Is this true? The whole village, old and young, was extremely excited. At this moment, no one cared about the unlucky county magistrate. They were all envious of the village chief for meeting the emperor. He had known that they would follow him to the new capital. Li Lao Si and Li Lao Er were both surrounded, especially Li Lao Si. 2 naughty boys, Jia and Jiaxi and Njiaxi, were also on their arms, jumping around like anxious monkeys. Mrs. Lee was also curious and asked her eldest grandson Jiaran to ask questions. Jiaran was extremely excited when he thought about yesterday, so he opened his mouth and said, Grandma, the teacher is simply too powerful. He can quarrel with all the scholars and make all the high officials in the court speechless. The emperor made the teacher the censor in court, and he will be the official who specializes in complaining in the future. Who is not good? Teacher, I can tell it to the emperor. Oh, Mr. Wen is so awesome. The old lady, Tao Hongying, and Zhao Yuru were all shocked when they heard this. They were more happy for Jiaran. They really met a good teacher. Mrs. Kui was listening, but her mood was complicated. Senior brother does not like fighting and has always been indifferent to fame and fortune. Otherwise, he would not be willing to study in the Hanlin Academy for more than 10 years. Now senior brother takes the initiative to jump into Vanity Fair and jump into the whirlpool of court battles. It cannot be said that it is all because of her, but it is definitely inseparable from her. On the other side, outside the crowd, Mr. Ye embraced the good news and sat with Mr. Wen. The two of them had almost never crossed paths before, but because of Qingshui village, because of the Li family, and because of this group of people who also saved them from danger, they had the opportunity to sit together like this. Mr. Ye took a wooden stick and pulled out the sweet potatoes from the fire for Ji Yin. Then he looked at Mr. Wen and said, Mr. Wen, if you completely start the fight between the court and the central government this time, I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble in the future. Mr. Wen nodded. I understand what Mr. Ho is worried about. I won't come here often in the future. Firstly, I want to avoid suspicion, and secondly, I don't want to cause trouble to the village. Mr. Ye shook his head. That's not what I meant. I made an agreement with Aunt Lee last night. I will take most of the money for building the hot spring village. I will tell the outside world that this is my property, which will scare Xiao Xiao. In fact, this place belongs to the Li family and the village. Mr. Wen was also surprised. He did not expect that Mr. Ye, a prince, could do so much for the Li family and the village, but he was also happy for the village and the Li family. This is best. The marquis reputation is not something that ordinary people would dare to offend. Mr. Ye waved his hand. I just want to wrong you. I'm afraid someone will say that I picked the peaches when I planted trees. Mr. Wen laughed when he heard this. If I were afraid of what outsiders would say, I wouldn't have gone to Beijing yesterday. With a few words, the two of them have reached a tacit understanding and consensus. From now on, one is in the light and the other is in the dark, one is a sword and the other is a mouthpiece, and we work together to protect Broken Gold Beach and these kind and strong farmers. Hearing the good news, I felt warm and grateful in my heart. I took some roasted sweet potatoes and gave them to eat and to break off a section as a thank you gift. With these two protectors, she will no longer be afraid of being bullied in the village, and she can also take small actions with peace of mind. By the time everyone had satisfied their curiosity, it was already an hour later. The village chief, Li Lauer, and others said that their mouths were dry and Mr. Ye had already taken them away. Mrs. Kui also has to go back to Zindu. After all, her dowry property still needs to be sorted out. She cannot leave it completely to her adopted brother and ignore it. Mr. Wen stayed for one more day and only sent Mrs. Kui to the intersection. In the afternoon, Mr. Zhou came again. His eyes were all red, and it was obvious that he didn't sleep last night because of breaking the Golden Beach. The entire beach of broken gold is completely presented on a large piece of paper under his pen. From the pool under the waterfall to the flowing route of the waterway, where small courtyards are built, where simple wooden houses are built, where pavilions are built, and where corridors are built. Even in the villages outside the valley, each family's yard is clearly drawn, including where to plant trees and where to plant flowers. Everyone stood in front of the scroll, holding their breath and not daring to speak for a long time. Will this desolate gravel beach really turn into such a beautiful wonderland in a month? In the end, the village chief shouted, "It's worth it. This 1,000 taels is so worth it." Everyone clapped vigorously and expressed their gratitude loudly and excitedly. "Thank you, Mr. Zhou, it's so beautiful. Are we going to live in a fairyland from now on? Wow, it's great. It's really like a dream." Mr. Zhou was a little embarrassed to be praised. He coughed twice and said, "I asked the craftsman yesterday to carefully calculate the materials. I am afraid it will be around 1,200 taels. This is the lowest. It cannot be simplified anymore." Everyone seemed to have been poured cold water on them, and they all woke up immediately. Every family went through their money bags last night. Even if they robbed the bandits in the mountains and forests, the money they could come up with was only more than 200 taels. Now, the silver is only a fraction. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 154. Chapter 154 Dividing the Pie. The village chief glanced at old Mrsli. They had spoken a few words before, and he felt confident, so he stepped forward to talk to Mr. Zhou. "Don't worry, Mr. Zhou, our village will definitely be able to get this money even if we are new here. We are not familiar with where to find good craftsmen and buy wood and stone. We hope that you can give us some advice." Mr. Zhou nodded, thought for a while and said, "I do not avoid relatives when promoting talents, but I have a good candidate, my brother-in-law. He is a scholar, but he has liked these chores since he was a child, and has been disciplined by his family. Unfortunately, he has not changed after repeated admonitions. Now that he is getting older, the family has given up. He is out and about, has met many craftsmen, and is familiar with shopping. If you can trust him, I will let him come over tomorrow. Okay, Mr. Joe recommended it. Of course we can rest assured, the village chief agreed immediately, which made Mr. Joe very happy. His brother-in-law, there's nothing wrong with him, he's just too out of tune. He was sent to suffer hardship for a month, and maybe he can curb his weird temperament. The matter was settled in this way. Mr. Joe still had errands to do, so he went back to Zindu with Mr. Wen under the setting sun. Everyone was preparing for dinner, but they were all thinking about where the 1,200 taels came from. After dinner, the village chief, Uncle Zhao, Mrs. Li, their 3 sons, and Lu Biatu gathered together and held a small meeting. Jiyan is young, nestled in her grandma's arms, obediently nibbling Spring Festival cakes, and secretly listening to the excitement. This Spring Festival cake was bought by Mrs. Kui. It tastes a bit like the mung bean cake of later generations and has a very dry texture, which is suitable for her to nibble on little by little. The village chief spoke first and asked Mrs. Li, "Sister, did you say earlier that Mr. Ye wanted to help the village?" Old Mrs. Li nodded, thought for a while and said, "I was gossiping about building the valley, but the money was not enough, so Mr. Ye said he had money and wanted to lend it to our family, a few hundred taels. But I didn't agree. Mr. Ye couldn't make money once he came here. It's not easy. Fighting with barbarians every day is like risking your life. Secondly, we are a big piece of meat here, and I don't know how many people will be jealous of us in the future." The old lady sighed and said, "I discussed with Mr. Ye that these few hundred taels will be considered as his investment in the village. If he makes money in the future, he will share the same money. This place will also be considered his property to scare outsiders." The village chief knocked on the pipe pot and agreed very much, "Big sister, you are right. Mr. Ye has helped our village too much. It is not good for others to worry about it without getting anything in return." Uncle Zhao lost a lot of weight because of his injury and lack of food and shelter, but he was in good spirits. At this moment, he also said, "Yes, Mr. Ye was originally associated with your family. In fact, he only cares about your family, but he saved everyone's lives on the dock, sent food, and came to visit again. Let's keep it for nothing. It's shameless to take someone else's money." Mrs. Li was satisfied with what she heard and said, "Master Ye finally agreed with what I said and agreed to put our broken gold beach in his name. Although I have already gone up to heaven to hear it, if someone wants to plot against us, the emperor will also. I won't treat those wealthy families seriously just because of our small village. However, Mr. Ye has military power and status, so no one dares to provoke him. Young Master Ye is such a good person, so kind, we can't repay him enough. Yes, everyone has seen it today. After the valley is built, it will be so beautiful. I'm afraid some people will be jealous of it. Mr. Ye is a military prince. If it is his property, no one will dare to take it." Everyone was happy, having decided on the general direction, and discussed how to distribute the dividends. Mrs. Li added, "Master Ye said that these 2 hills, valleys, and riverbanks were allocated to our village by the imperial court. He only put in one name and invested some money, so he could not share the money with the people in the village. From now on, he needs to use part of his share for the village." The village chief was anxious after hearing this. Master Ye is so polite. Without his help, where would we be on the top of the mountain? That is, if you ask me, it would be better to give Mr. Ye the same dividends. Everyone was talking at a loss, and the discussion lasted for more than half an hour. When they finally got everyone together to talk, night had fallen. There are bonfires in the valley, reflecting the hopeful faces of the villagers. The village chief took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry, everyone, Mr. Ye will invest money with us to build the valley. Work will start as usual tomorrow." "Really?" Great, Mr. Ye really saved his life. Young Master Ye is really a great benefactor to our village. I must thank Mr. Ye very much in the future. The mountains and rivers are doubtful, and there is another village in Ludawa. The villagers cheered as if they had been lifted from to heaven. The village chief waved his hand to signal everyone to be quiet, and then said, "Why did young Master Ye help so much? It was because the second brother and his family helped him when he was in trouble. Now that young Master Ye is willing to lend money, he is also repaying the second brother and his family. We are all taking advantage of him." He waved the pipe pot with his remaining arm, as the old saying goes, brothers settle accounts. We pulled each other and escaped together to come here. We are like a family. No one wants to be ruined because of unfair distribution of money. So, now that the wild geese haven't come back, we have to decide whether to steam or boil the meat. The village chief is right, this is what it should be. Yes, you can't spoil your love because of money. The villagers spoke one after another, thinking about struggling for life in the mountains and forests, and the despair they felt at the dock. Everyone cherished the stability now and the good days that were just around the corner. The village chief was very pleased to hear this, and then told the result of their discussion. "This is what we discussed, everyone, listen. The capital of 1,200 taels is used to build the valley and build houses for each family. So, if we divide it into 100 shares, 12 taels per share, who can get it? Just buy as many shares as you want. I estimate that everyone can buy about 25 shares. Mr. Wen and Mrs. Kui will leave 5 shares for them. If they don't want them, the rest will be given to the Li family. Even if it's 50 shares, Mr. Ye will take care of it all." Seeing that everyone was a little confused, Li Lauer started to help explain. "To put it simply, how many shares you buy, you will share the amount of silver in the future. For example, if your family buys 2 shares, then the valley will earn 1,000 taels of silver a month, and your family will divide it into 20 taels." "Oh, that's it, then we understand. It's like everyone gathering flour to bake a flatbread. Whoever contributes more dough will get a bigger portion of the flatbread," a woman said loudly. Everyone laughed and said, "Yes, yes, that's what it means. We would have understood if we had told you to divide the pie." The valley became a lot more lively because of a piece of big cake, which wiped away the solemnity just now. The village chief couldn't laugh or cry when he heard this. He quickly waved his hand to stop everyone from joking, and then said, "Grandma Fu Niu has talked about this with Mr. Ye before. Mr. Ye said that our valley will carry his name in the future, and no one will dare to bully him. He still takes the capital, but the mountains and valleys belong to our village. He is not willing to share the dividends and take advantage of the village. Therefore, according to the money invested, part of the dividends he gets will be given to us." After the elders discussed it, it was hard to let Mr. Ye down. "So I decided to use this part of the dividend to build a yard for Mr. Ye. In the future, if there are more, we will build a school for the children to study. When we see the house, we can remember that Mr. Ye has treated us well. When the children grow up, they can also be like Mr. Ye. Same, protect our country." "Okay, what the village chief said is good. Master Ye has treated us badly, and we cannot treat him badly. Yes, if we build a yard, our village will also have Mr. Ye's home." The villagers responded loudly and were grateful in their hearts. The village chief waved his hands and said, "Everyone agrees. Remember what you said today. Don't wait until you get some money in the future and talk nonsense with sour mouths. This one gets too much, that one gets too little. Who dares to spoil the friendship? I will personally drag him back to the forest to feed the wolves." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 155. Chapter 155. Help has arrived. "No, no, village chief, don't worry, everyone is happy to be alive. We have food and drink today, and money in the future we can laugh even in our dreams. Yes, whoever dares to be a white-eyed wolf will be drowned in everyone's saliva. The village chief finally calmed down his cold expression. He pointed to the mountains and riverbanks and said, "On the mountains and riverbanks, we have to make arrangements together on how and what to plant this year. Half of the future production will be divided according to the requirements of each country. Half of the money earned from the family's fields goes to the income from the valley." The villagers continued to be confused, and Li Lauer continued to explain patiently, "That is to say, each of our families will earn 800 taels by the end of the year if we add up to 400 acres of land. Half of it is 400 taels. Your 8 acres of land will be divided into 82 taels of silver. The remaining 400 taels are added to the income of the valley. Because everyone works together, the income of the valley will be divided into everyone's wages and capital, and then the dividends will be divided." Some villagers understand it, while some do not. The village chief became impatient and shouted loudly, "Just remember, work hard, and I will write down your work every day. At the end of the year, you will get a share of the land at home, and you will still get wages for your work. You can get a share of the money earned by Valley Hot Spring. Let's build the village together. Whoever does more will get more money and live a better life." Understood. Sure enough, the old man waved his pipe and pot, and everyone who didn't understand was shouted to understand. The village chief added, "The second brother can write and do math. From now on, I will leave it to him to record the work and calculate how much money each family will get. When I get old and can no longer shout, I will leave it to the village chief. Give it to him. Do you guys have any opinions?" No, this time everyone shouted louder than before. They are all ordinary farm men. They don't have great wisdom, but they are always short of cleverness. Whether it is Mr. Wen, Mrs. Kui, or Mr. Ye, they were all recruited by the Li family, and they have benefited from them all the way. After Li Lauer became the village chief, they hugged the Li family even tighter. "As long as we don't fall behind, we will definitely have the right time." Li Lauer was caught off guard and was given the role of the village chief's heir. It was a bit sudden. He wanted to refuse, but everyone dispersed in an instant. Every family's money bag was emptied out. "Your family had 1 share, and my family had 2 shares. Money came soon to pay." Li Lauer quickly took out a pen and paper, and everyone in the family wrote it down. Everyone knows that buying more shares will get you an extra dividend, but they also need to be rich. This is still in the mountains and forests. I robbed the bandits and got some windfall. Otherwise, my family would not be able to buy a share. However, some families have many old people and children, young and old, and they stayed in the valley when they robbed the bandits, so they really can't join together. Finally, the village chief makes the decision, and you can also buy half a share. So, excluding the Li family, there were a total of 24 households in the village, and they actually collected 30 shares. Old Mrs. Li also took out all the money at the bottom of the box and gritted her teeth and bought 20 shares. This is half enough. With the remaining half, Mr. Ye will not be too stressed even if Mrs. Kui and Mr. Wen do not participate. There were more than 200 taels of silver in Ji Yin's space, and she wanted to take them out to buy more shares for her family. It would be great to divide the money between them in the future. It's a pity that the family members were all away, and Grandma didn't give her this chance, so she settled the matter directly. She could only give up and look forward to the arrival of Yeshan and Dongmei more and more. They were good helpers arranged by Mr. Ye for her. Perhaps her earnest desire was felt by Master Ye over there in Zindu. The next day, he came over with Yeshan and Dongmei, as well as the 2,000 kilograms of grain rewarded by the emperor. The valley was as happy as the new year, because the 2,000 kilograms of grain rewarded by the emperor were actually japonica rice. If this is replaced by whole grains, it will definitely be enough for everyone to last until the end of summer. By then, the vegetables will be grown, and the mountains and fields will be full of food. You can fill your stomach no matter what, and you will not be afraid of starvation. Actually, just a word from the emperor, and how to handle the affairs of the people below is a big question. After all, sorghum is also a grain, and millet is also a grain. Why must we give japonica rice? But the Marquis of Zinting went to ask for it in person and brought his own soldiers to help transport it. Who dared to do anything about it, so 2,000 kilograms of japonica rice was delivered. The village chief was so happy that his chest almost reached the sky, and he waved the pipe pot in his hand very powerfully. He shouted to the villagers to unload the grain, and then said, "During this period of time, we need to open up wasteland and build valleys. We should all eat together. When we are all done, we will divide the remaining grain. At that time, everyone will have a good meal. It's up to you. Listen to the village chief." "Yes, we will do whatever the village chief says." The villagers responded one after another, making the village chief even happier. Mr. Ye hugged Jiyan and took out a pack of Osman Thus candies. Jiyan smiled and held it in his hand, drooling with joy. Orange Mrs. Lee sat Mr. Ye down and told her what happened last night. Mr. Ye called Yeshan and Dongmei to come forward. "Auntie, I'm going to fight in the north of the Yangtze River again soon. I'll leave Yeshan and Dongmei behind so that they can help the family and take care of Funiur. In addition, the money from the investment will also be given to the village. If you collect some things, they will be responsible for delivering them when the time comes." Hearing this, Mrs. Lee quickly asked, "How long will you be leaving this time? But you have to come back early. It's really dangerous. It must be important to save your life." Mr. Ye smiled and said, "Don't worry, Auntie, I know that I will leave early and come back early." Old Mrs. Lee stopped nagging. Seeing that the sun was already reaching her head, she quickly stood up and called Tao Hongying to cook and let Mr. Ye eat before leaving. Mr. Ye took advantage of this moment to signal Yeshan and Dongmei to come forward and said, "In the future, when I am not here, you must always protect the safety of the Li family and Funiu, especially Funiu. Her words are mine, don't question them. Just do what you're told." Yeshan and Dongmei quickly knelt down and bowed their heads respectfully. Jiyan's eyes were shining as she looked at Yeshan and Dongmei. She turned around and kissed Mr. Ye deeply. "Uncle Ye is the best." Mr. Ye smiled and wiped the saliva on his face, wiped the corners of Jiyan's mouth, and said, "You still have to be careful, understand?" "Understood." Jiyan nodded her little head with joy, her little white teeth showing out in joy. After dinner, Mr. Ye set off. The villagers sent him off. Before he could go back, a young and dandy-looking young man arrived with a group of craftsmen. Needless to say, this is Mr. Zhou's brother-in-law. Everyone finally knew why Mr. Zhou had repeatedly explained yesterday, because his brother-in-law really didn't look reliable. Not to mention the colorful clothes he was wearing, he walked crookedly and spoke casually, but when he looked at the entire valley, the light in his eyes was piercingly bright. Just like a mouse seeing japonica rice, a rabbit seeing cabbage, and a child seeing Osman Thus sugar. If the people in the village hadn't seen this look, they would have really wanted to drive him away. I really don't dare to leave the place where the whole village will settle down in the hands of such a person. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 156. Chapter 156, Vigorous Construction. This handsome young man ran around like a monkey at the bottom of the valley for a long time, and finally grabbed the village chief's hand. He was so excited. "Uncle, thank you for trusting me. Don't worry, I will definitely build this place into a fairyland on Earth, no, a fairyland for the Queen Mother. If it is not done well, I will eat the shoe." The smile on the village chief's face was uncontrollable. He really had a godlike thought. Having ruined the livelihood of their whole village, you still have to watch him eat his shoes. Do you use shoes as money? But things were already like this, so he had no choice but to admit it. Then I'll be in trouble, Mr. Yan. Yes, this monkey-like dandy has a very decent name, Yan Zheng. I don't know which elder named him. I can only say that hope is good, but reality is cruel. Yan Zheng has stayed at Broken Gold Beach since then. Even when all the craftsmen went back at night, he did not leave. Sitting by the campfire in the evening, I drank wild vegetable porridge and ate pancakes from big pottery bowls with the villagers. They talked about how to build the valley, what kind of houses each family wanted, and how to save materials and money. This finally made the villagers completely relieved. This man seemed unreliable, but he also had some real ability. Jiyan was also sitting on a small stone at the moment, with the oil paper bag in her hand open. A group of little children gathered in front of her, and each of them shared a piece of Osmanthus candy. They licked it with great satisfaction, and their clothes were wet with saliva. Jiaxi's family has a few half-grown children, who are also very greedy. They squatted and played not far away, but their eyes glanced at the oil paper bag in Jiyan's hand from time to time, full of longing. Jiyan shouted in a sweet voice, "Brother, brother!" Jia and Jiaxi immediately ran over, and the remaining pieces of Osmanthus candy were so sweet that they filled several mouths. When the old men and women saw it, they praised the good news one after another. Our Fu Niu is really a good girl. She is never stingy. She always gives out half of everything she has to eat. Yes, and I never cry. I am always happy whenever I see her, and it makes people happy when I see her. It's a good name given by Aunt Li. Fu Niu is the luckiest little girl. Among other things, Mrs. Kui regards Fu Niu as her own daughter. Mr. Yan never lets go every time he comes over and keeps hugging this girl. Everyone was gossiping, and the Li family was happy and proud after hearing it. That night, Yan Zheng slept in a shack with the villagers. He got up excitedly in the middle of the night and followed Li Laosi and others on patrol. On the second day, vigorous construction began. It was just getting light, and almost all the people in the village who could move went up the mountain. Cut down trees, mow grass, and continue to open up wasteland. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Li Laosi stayed behind. Lu Baiatu and Li Laoer took the money and went to buy materials with Yan Zheng in the car. At noon, the first load of wood had been delivered to the valley. The villagers hurriedly unloaded it, and the stones arrived soon after. Things are brought in like water, and money is spent like water. Fortunately, Yeshan returned to the city and brought Mr. Yes 600 taels of silver over and gave them to Li Laoer. The villagers wish they had 8 hands, and all of them are so busy that they never touch the ground. But even though everyone who was tired at night fell asleep and the sound of Hulu Mountain was heard, no one said a word about being tired. The old people are too old to do heavy work, so they carry small children on their backs, chop wood, and boil water for cooking. The women took their young men with them to go up the mountain to cut grass and move dwarf pines down the mountain. Men have to cut down trees, move rocks and wood, clear out wasteland, and have to keep watch at night. Everyone is working hard to build their new home as soon as possible. Not only do they need to settle down, but they also need to lay a foundation for their children and grandchildren to pass on. In this way, after 5 or 6 days of busy work, all the materials were transported into the valley and the hills on both sides were cleared. Jiyan jumped anxiously, and finally waited for this day, because the fruit tree saplings in the nursery could not be squeezed out, and if they were not moved out, they would probably bloom. At midnight that day, she carefully got up, passed through the encirclement of her grandma and brothers, and finally carefully touched Dongmei's side. Dongmei, who was practicing martial arts, was the most alert and woke up almost immediately. The good news hurriedly reached her ears and said, "Aunt Mei, take me out." Dongmei didn't hesitate, immediately pulled off a coat, wrapped the good news on her back and went out. The villagers on night watch saw her and didn't ask much, thinking she was doing it for convenience. In the dark night, no one saw that there was a little baby on her back. Jiyan saw that the camp was 100 feet away, so she quietly moved the saplings out of the space. Each of these saplings is as thick as a small rolling pin. Adding more than 1,000 saplings together, they are piled up like a hill, which is really a lot. Jiyan swallowed secretly and urged Dongmei to go back. Dongmei felt a little strange, but she didn't ask. After returning to the shack, Jiyan whispered in her ear, "Aunt May, Uncle Ye has sent fruit trees to plant on the hills on both sides. Tomorrow morning you take my father and the others to where we were just now and bring back the saplings." Even though Dongmei had received her master's orders, she still couldn't help being surprised. Could it be that the little girl just went to see the saplings, but why didn't she notice it? Jiyan's little heart felt like it was in her throat. Fortunately, Dongmei quickly responded, "Okay." Jiyan breathed a long sigh of relief, wrapped the little quilt around her and fell asleep beautifully. The problem of how to take out these fruit trees has been tormenting her for many days. Now that it is solved, it is really easy. She needs to catch up on her sleep. This night, she really slept a lot and didn't wake up until 3 o'clock in the morning. Mrs. Kui didn't know when she came. She sat aside and talked to Mrs. Lee. "Auntie, my senior brother and I have bought 5 shares, and we will be able to move around or live in peace in the future. This is 200 taels of silver, and the 60 taels will be returned to Mr. Ye. Auntie, tell me carefully. This is robbing him of his bonus. For the other 140 taels, please ask the village to help me build a small courtyard, preferably next to my aunt's house." Mrs. Lee happily collected the money and said with a smile, "Don't worry, Mr. Ye is not a stingy person. Besides, the village originally wanted to leave 5 shares for you, but you didn't come over for a while and you were anxious to use the money, so Mr. Ye will take care of it. I'll let ER and the others pay more attention to your yard and build it well. You'll come to live there often and we'll be in love." Mrs. Kui turned her head and found that Jiyan was awake, so she quickly hugged her, wiped her face and combed her hair with her own hands, and then took her out for a walk. At this moment, the young and old in the village are working hard to transport fruit trees to the mountain. Everyone was extremely happy and kept saying, "Master Ye is so awesome. Where did he find so many fruit trees? Yes, I thought before that it would be great if we planted fruit trees on this mountain. The flowers would bloom beautifully, and we could pick fruits and sell them in autumn." The village chief uncle said that this fruit tree is still small, and we can still grow crops under it this year. Yan Zhen was dancing excitedly, looking more and more like a monkey. "This is an apple tree. It blooms in May. The hot spring village will be built by then. I'm afraid those swindlers in Kyoto will go crazy and come to steal money. Haha, let them laugh at me for not doing his job properly. Let them take a good look this time. My master's ability. This fairyland on earth was created by me." Today's third update is coming. The book review is almost 1000. Huahua will be ready for the 4th update. Dear friends, please remember not to fatten up Huahua, come back often, and remind me to give 5-star praise. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 157. Chapter 157. Asking for help. The village chief was also very happy. He supported Uncle Zhao, who was still having trouble walking, and shouted to everyone at the mountain pass, "Be careful, lift the saplings, don't peel off the skin. This sapling is very valuable, and it will take many days for the bark to break." "Well, Dazu said if you don't carry a few trees at a time, you think you are the 4th child. Remember to dig the tree hole bigger and deeper, don't be lazy." Mrs. Kui grew up in Weizhou and knows a lot about fruit trees. At this moment, she came forward with the good news in her arms and spoke to the village chief and several other old men. "Uncle Village Chief, is this a fruit sapling that the general found? It looks really good, it's 2 years old by the looks of it." Jian heard this and secretly raised her heart. For fear of revealing her secret, she quickly pointed to the top of the mountain and shouted, "Sister, go play, go play." Mrs. Kui quickly patted her and gently coaxed her, "Fu Niu, be good, we are busy on the mountain, so we won't go up. The aunt will bring you some snacks later." Jian hugged her neck and kept silent. As expected, the village chief responded with a sad look on his face. "Mrs. Kui, if you don't come over, the old man, am going to talk to you." "Uncle, do you need my help?" "Just ask, Uncle," Mrs. Kui responded happily. The village was so busy, and she planned to move around more often in the future, and even built a house next to the Li family. At this time, she also wanted to help, but she couldn't help. Speaking of it, she has loved reading since she was a child, and her father also supported it. Housekeeping and management, which ordinary women are good at, she is most bored and not good at. These things can be seen from the fact that she did not take care of the dowry herself when she married to the Marquis mansion. Now, the family's manor and property have been reclaimed, and it is Liu's sworn brother who is helping to organize them, and then they are given to sister-in-law Qian, who once again becomes the hands-off shopkeeper. The village chief found a big stone in a sunny place and asked Mrs. Kui to sit down. "Mrs. Kui, we came from the north. Let's plant sorghum and millet. That won't be a problem. But now that we have to plant so many fruit saplings, I really don't know what to do. I have eaten the fruits, but they are wild in the mountains. No one has ever seen how to grow it. Does Mrs. Kui know anyone who can help us hire a fruit farmer? We are willing to pay high wages, as long as he is down to earth and capable." "This is not a difficult task," Mrs. Kui nodded immediately. "Don't worry, uncle, I will go back soon, and I will find a suitable person to deliver it to the village right away." The village chief smiled happily and said, "Our village is really blessed. If you pick up 2 people in the woods, they are both noble people. You and Mr. Wen have really helped us a lot. Uncle, we have lived and died together, so we don't use polite words like this. From now on, I will build a house in the village and I will visit frequently. You are treating me like an outsider by being so polite." Mrs. Kui stood up with a smile. She suddenly remembered something and said, "Uncle, do you need to plant grain under the fruit trees? I'm afraid sorghum won't work. Do you want to plant millet? I'll bring some good seeds to the village by the way, right?" "That's great, we're also thinking of going to a nearby village to find someone to replace him with." Uncle Zhao and other old men's eyes lit up when they heard this, and they responded one after another, "My family is always more supportive than outsiders. The people in the nearby villages seem to be a bit bullying, and I really don't dare to deal with them." Mrs. Kui nodded, returned with the good news, and told Mrs. Li that she wanted to return to the city. Jian became playful for a moment and hugged Mrs. Kui's neck without letting go. Mrs. Kui consulted the old lady and said, "Auntie, let me take Fu Niu for a walk, we will be close to each other and will be back in the afternoon." Old Mrs. Li tapped her granddaughter on the forehead without stopping her. "Go, don't look at Fu Niu. She knows everything and is smart. If she makes trouble, just teach her and don't be fooled by her, you know." Mrs. Kui couldn't help but laugh. "I understand, Auntie, let's go back quickly." Sister-in-law Qian drove the carriage, but when she got on the carriage, Dong Mei also jumped on the other side of the carriage. Seeing sister-in-law Qian looking over, she said, "When our Lord Marquis left, he asked me to take care of Miss Jian at all times." Mrs. Kui heard about it in the carriage and said, "Let's go, it's a good thing to have an extra person to help." The carriage moved forward quickly and soon left the gravel beach and entered the official road. Jian was extremely excited. She had short calves and no one was holding her on her back. It was difficult to take a step away from the gravel beach. Now she finally had the chance to go out for a walk along the way. She almost clung to the car window and couldn't get down, making Mrs. Kui dumbfounded. Mrs. Kui recovered 2 manors, the largest of which covered an area of more than 300 acres. This village also has the largest amount of grain stored in it, and there are hundreds of tenants. In the past few days, Luz Haiheng has been spending time here with people, counting and registering, for fear that his adopted sister, who is not good at trivial things, will be deceived by the slaves and suffer a loss in the future. He also knows that he has a good acquaintance with his sister-in-law over at the gravel beach. So, he was a little surprised to see his adopted sister come back so soon. "Jinro, you came back very quickly. Is there anything going on over there?" Mrs. Kui smiled and hugged Jiyan and saluted. "My sworn brother guessed it right. I'm coming back to ask for help from my sworn brother." Luz Haiheng was curious about what his adopted sister wanted from him, but he was even more curious about the fat girl in his arms. "Sister-in-law, this child is..." Mrs. Kui said, "This is the little granddaughter of the Li family. I like it very much. The Li family is busy, so I will help take care of her for a while." Luz Haiheng secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He was worried that his adopted sister would be involved in something outside and be caught by the Ho mansion, which would cause trouble again in the future. Jiyan is so smart. Knowing that she was misunderstood, she hugged Mrs. Kui's neck and shouted in a sweet voice, Senior sister, I'm hungry." Luz Haiheng's family is full of boys, and he especially likes cute little girls, not to mention that Jiyan is so good looking. Not only is he white, plump and cute, his big eyes are as watery as black grapes, his small mouth is as red as a cherry, and he doesn't have the dark, thin and shrinking appearance of a farm boy at all. This child is so good looking, the family must love her very much. As soon as Luz Haiheng started to reach out, Jiyan immediately hugged his neck, making him smile happily. Oh, this little girl is so cute. I'm afraid she is less than 2 years old. She speaks so clearly." He repeatedly called to the maid he had brought with him, "Hurry up and ask the kitchen to arrange lunch. Make some meat porridge for the children and a bowl of custard. Remember to put less salt." Mrs. Kui covered her mouth and laughed when she heard the good news, but her uncle kept shouting and coaxed Luz Haiheng until he finished the meal. Hearing that they were looking for a reliable fruit farmer and good seeds over the gravel beach, Luz Haiheng said, "It's hard for you from Zhuangzi to tell the difference for the time being. After all, it's been in the hands of the Ho mansion for too long. I'd better ask someone to come back. Let's find someone from my village." "Great, stepbrother, I have the same idea." Mrs. Kui was happy. "There are also good seeds, stepbrother, please help me find some." Luz Haiheng nodded and said, "You have a lot of coarse grains stored in the manor. Do you want to bring some to the gravel beach?" Mrs. Kui thought for a while and said, "Okay, just bring 1,000 caddies. If you take more, I'm afraid the village chief and others have other arrangements. In addition, I see that there are mules in the village, and my sworn brother asked someone to help me match one a cart. I want to give it to the Li family." The Li family also had a mule before, but it was hit by an arrow and ran away. Jiyan thought of taking and subconsciously touched the back of his head. That fall was so hard that even now, she still gets dizzy occasionally. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 158. Chapter 158. The Reason for Self-Righteousness. Seeing her like this, Mrs. Kui quickly changed the subject and asked about other trivial matters in the village. They were eating and talking happily here, but the Jiao family's village next door was not so lively. When they married their daughter into the Marquis mansion, in order to make it easier to move around in the future, the Jiao family bought one at a high price next to the village of the Marquis mansion. Now, Mrs. Kui wants Zhuangzi back in the Marquis mansion, and the Jiao family doesn't like it. Especially in the past few days, Kujiao Zhuangzi was packing things and registering them for storage, and the manpower left by the home mansion earlier secretly came to deliver messages from time to time. Thinking of the food stored in the warehouse, Mrs. Jiao felt so much hatred that her whole body ached. At this moment, she was sitting in the yard, listening to my old lady scolding her. "You are just too easy to bully. She is just a second cousin. What are you afraid of her for? She just gave her the dowry, and in the end, Zhuangzi was robbed. We don't have enough food at home, and we want to take some from you. Well, now it's better, there's no hope." Jiao was so angry that she gritted her teeth and argued with her mother in a low voice, "Do you blame me for the lack of food at home? Who asked you to sell all the food? The emperor moved the capital and everyone gathered here. Food is rich and valuable, don't you know?" "Of course I know, that's why I sold it," Mrs. Jiao said confidently. "I still had hope in you, but I didn't expect you to be so useless." Mrs. Jiao was so angry that she got up and left. She should not come back to this family. Originally, the Marquis mansion ran out of supplies from Zhuangzi, and she wanted to go back to her parents' house to get some, but she couldn't get the things, and she was furious to death. At this moment, a woman suddenly ran in to report. "Madam, what a great thing, the concubine from the village next door actually brought a child back from outside and was standing at the door talking and laughing with the eldest man of the Lu family." What? Before Mrs. Jiao could be happy, Mrs. Jiao had already stood up in surprise. Maybe this child is the she gave birth to outside. No wonder she was making trouble with the Marquis when she arrived in Jiangnan. It turned out that she was born outside. Someone is there. Mrs. Jiao was also very happy, but she still knew how to be cautious. She quickly changed into a set of coarse cloth dresses worn by ordinary women, and then sneaked to the village next door to visit. Jiyan didn't know that she had caused trouble to Mrs. Kui when she came out to play. Now that she had eaten and drank enough, she hugged Mrs. Kui's neck and walked out. Luz Haiheng asked someone to prepare a basket of eggs, 2 boxes of soft and easy-to-melt snacks, and 2 pieces of soft cotton cloth. They put them in the carriage and gave instructions to his adopted sister. "This is what I gave to the little girl, not yours." Mrs. Kui laughed when she heard this. "I know, my step-brother likes his daughter so much, so he should hurry up and have another one with his sister-in-law." Luz Haiheng glared, "It's not your fault that you found a lot of work for me. I haven't seen your sister-in-law in 3 days." Mrs. Kui quickly apologized, "I will come back from the gravel beach tomorrow and leave this place to me. Brother-in-law, please go back to accompany your sister-in-law. Forget it, Zhuangzi is in your hands. I'm afraid it will be ruined within 2 days. When I sort it out, I'll find you 2 more reliable stewards." Luz Haiheng waved his hand, his dislike for his adopted sister clearly visible on his face. At the end, he squeezed Jiyan's chubby hand and shook it. "Fu Niu, come and play again next time, Uncle will prepare delicious food for you." "Thank you, Uncle," Jiyan nodded with a smile, and her cute appearance made Luz Haiheng curious again. Soon, the small convoy set off. In the front car was Mrs. Kui holding good news, and behind there was a carriage and a mule cart, pulling an old fruit farmer, a cart of coarse grains and a cart of fine seeds. When the good news didn't come out, I was looking forward to it, but after only walking for half a day, I started to miss my parents and grandma, and I was excited and looking forward to getting home soon. Mrs. Kui didn't restrain her and let her play. However, Jiyan was tired from playing and fell asleep in her arms. Mrs. Kui patted the fat baby in her arms, suddenly feeling greedy. If she got married again and gave birth to a daughter or son like this, would she also be very happy? Thinking like this, she also felt sleepy, and slowly fell asleep with her arms around Jiyan. They had no idea that someone had taken advantage of them and was almost going crazy with joy. On the other side of the gravel beach, the Lee family was also looking forward to it unconsciously. No matter what they were busy with, they couldn't help but stare at the intersection. Every day when good news comes to the house, everyone is either carrying it or hugging it, and they are used to it. Suddenly the child was no longer around, and everyone felt empty. They couldn't even eat lunch, and they always felt like they were missing a lot of things. Finally, looking forward to the return of Mrs. Kui's carriage, all the young and old of the Lee family hurriedly rushed to it. The old lady didn't care about the pain in her shoulder and hugged her sleepy granddaughter. "Oh, Grandma's good granddaughter, you are back." Tao Hongying also quickly touched her daughter's arms and legs, causing Mrs. Kui to laugh and cry, "Fu Niu is fine. She can eat, drink, and play happily." The Li family was embarrassed. "It's not that I can't trust you, it's just that this child has been around all the time, and when he suddenly went out for a while, the whole family was lost." Ji Yan felt warm in his heart, and he was afraid that Grandma would injure her shoulder wound, so he gave her a big kiss and ran to his mother's arms. Seeing her brothers coming over, she pouted and kissed each of them, making Jia An's family happy to play with her sister. Tao Hongying put her daughter on Jia 11's back and told her, "She's nearby, don't run too far." Ji Yan quickly reached out to the car and said, "Dim sum, my dim sum." Mrs. Kui smiled and took a box and handed it to Jia An to hold. The three brothers and sister then ran away happily, obviously looking for a place to share. Everyone was laughing, and it happened that the village chief also brought someone over, and then we got down to business. The fruit farmer Lu's Haiheng helped find was named Han. He was an old man over 50 years old. His dark complexion and calloused hands showed that he was an expert who had been working all year round. The village chief was extremely satisfied. After a few words of greeting, he had old Han taken to the mountain. The villagers had already sent the fruit seedlings up the mountain, but they didn't dare to plant them, for fear that something was wrong and they were in urgent need of guidance. Mrs. Kui pointed out the fine seeds to everyone again. "This is the fine seed from my sworn brothers Wangzi. You can plant it with confidence." In addition, I also asked people to pack 1,000 kilograms of coarse grains. "Don't dislike it, uncle, village chief, keep it for everyone to make rations." I don't mind it, this is a help in times of need and it's a big help." The village chief was so happy that he loudly called Li Lao to come forward. "Second brother, make sure to write it down in the autumn, we will return double the amount of fine seeds, and we will also increase the amount of coarse grains by 20%. Li Lao responded and immediately took out his charcoal pen and made 2 notes in his small notebook. Mrs. Kui still wanted to stop her. She was afraid that the villagers would be so polite, so she didn't bring too much coarse food. Old Mrs. Li took her hand and said, "The village chief's arrangement is right. No one's food is blown by the wind. If you borrow something, you have to pay it back, so it's not difficult to borrow again." "Yes," the village chief nodded with a smile, "there are so many people in the village, it's hard to get into the habit of asking for anything you need. Mr. Ye even gave the saplings, and it was recorded in the account, and he will have to pay the capital in the future. Everyone, now that I have mountains and land, as long as I work hard, I will definitely have a good life." Mrs. Kui didn't insist anymore, but she admired everyone even more in her heart. Who can not like such hard-working and self-reliant people? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 159. Chapter 159, Playing with Fire and Burning Yourself. After unloading the fine seeds and grain, the carriage went back, leaving the mule cart behind. Mrs. Kui handed the reins to Mr. Li and said with a smile, "We have a lot of mules in our village, and we usually use horse-drawn carriages, so the mule carts are idle. Our Daking just ran away, so let's keep this one at home for now." "Of course. This is a loan. When the family has money, I will give you money." Of course the Li family could guess that she was helping the family in disguise. Old Mrs. Li did not refuse this kind offer. "Okay, then we are not polite. It is really inconvenient to go anywhere without a mule cart. When I earn money later, I will give it to you according to the price, but now I owe it." As expected, Mrs. Kui was even happier, and the Li family members were also smiling happily around the mule cart. Daking was hit by an arrow earlier and threw away Mrs. Li and Jiyan. They ran away to nowhere and were never found. Now this new mule has arrived. He looks very young at Yaka, fat and strong, and even more majestic than Daking. When the villagers heard about it, they also came over to take a look, which made the new mule a little flattered. In the end, Mrs. Li named it Xiaoqing, and he was regarded as taking over as Daqing's brother. Mrs. Kui sat for a while, but couldn't help much, so she took sister-in-law Qiang back. There was a lot of excitement at home. Jiyan followed his two naughty brothers and ran down the hillside in one breath. It was not peaceful either. Because when the naughty boys in the village saw the snack box, they were like wolves who saw the rabbit. Following the three brothers and sisters, a swarm of bees came running over. Jiaxi Jian opened the snack box and licked her lips greedily when she saw the various snacks inside. But they still put the box into their sister's hands and urged, "Sister, eat, sister, eat." Jian smiled and showed her little white teeth. She took a piece of snack and took a big bite. As expected, all the naughty boys swallowed hard. Jian was so amused that she laughed and no longer wanted to covet them. She took some snacks in her little chubby hands and divided them between you and me. There are 7 or 8 naughty boys, and a box of snacks is not enough to share. In the end, Jian and Jia 11 received 2 pieces each, and the other boys each received 1 piece. Jian followed Mrs. Kui and had a full lunch, so she just ordered a piece of snack and ate it slowly. The naughty boys were still not satisfied with their food, but they didn't make any fuss and wanted to eat more. They quickly scattered around and started to be mischievous. In spring, everything revives, and birds naturally begin to multiply. The naughty boys were lucky enough to find a nest of eggs. I don't know who it was but suggested, "Fu Niu has given us snacks, let's burn bird eggs for Fu Niu to eat." "Okay, I'll light the fire." "Look for firewood, find more firewood." The naughty boys did as they were told and soon lit a fire in front of the stone. Jiyan was sitting on the stone and couldn't stop her, so she climbed down from the stone for fear that they would roast her too. Unfortunately, this is often the case, whatever you are afraid of comes back. A naughty boy was afraid that Jiyan would fall, so he wanted to help Jiyan, but he forgot that the firewood in his hand was still burning, and the pestle hit Jiyan's clothes. He was so frightened that he threw the firewood away. The fire on the firewood was extinguished, but the red coals were still burning, so the surrounding grass was immediately ignited. Wildfires spread rapidly due to the spring breeze. The naughty boys were so frightened that when they realized what they were doing, they screamed and ran for help. "Help, it's on fire, it's on fire. Woo, Dad, it's on fire." Jiyan was lying on the edge of the big rock. He couldn't get down, let alone go up. He was completely frightened. "Oh my God, did she step on dog poop? This is such bad luck." Jiaxi and Jian jumped anxiously when they saw the burning wildfire surrounding the big rocks. "Sister, sister." They are also afraid, but others can run, but they cannot. The two of them were cruel, stepped on the burning weeds, rushed in, lifted up their sister and ran out. The wildfire quickly burned their trousers, causing the two to scream in pain as they ran. When the villagers arrived, They saw Jiyan with a pale face and her two brothers holding her arms. And Njixi's legs have turned into fireballs. Fortunately, Mr. Li was washing up, heard the noise, and brought a bucket over. He rushed up like the wind, picked up the two boys and stuffed them into the bucket, shouting loudly, "Girl, hold daddy, don't let go." Jiyan immediately hugged her father tightly and held her tightly in front of him. Li Laosi ran back with his nephew in one hand and a bucket in the other, with his daughter hanging on his chest. "Mr. Zhang, help me, help me." The Li family also rushed over at this moment. Seeing him like this, they were scared to death. Ji Yi took the bucket and ran to the shack. Dr. Zhang was taking a nap and was a little dazed with shock. During this period of time, the villagers were busy settling down, and he couldn't help. He just changed medicines and boiled medicine for a few seriously injured people every day. Originally, he thought he could go to Zindu in a few days to see the new capital, but the naughty boys found him another job. Jia and Jia 11 was lifted out of the bucket by Jia Yi and cried out in pain. Fortunately, the old lady raised her children carefully, and despite the cold weather in spring and autumn, even though it was already the end of March, she still wore the quilted jackets and trousers worn by her grandchildren. Just now, Li Laosi rescued Jia and Jiaxi in time. There were a lot of blisters on his feet and calves, but there were no major problems. It's just that the cotton pants are completely ruined and burned to a crisp. They can't be worn anymore. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru were carrying half of their cotton pants, their legs weak with fear. Mrs. Li held her choking granddaughter in her arms, patting and coaxing her grandson gently. Looking at her grandson, she really wanted to give them a good beating. Jia An's family was sitting in the shack with bare legs, shyly covering the middle of her legs. She was also scared to see her family members like this. The two looked at each other, pulled their necks and started crying. "Woo, we just want to burn bird eggs for my sister to eat. We didn't mean to roast my sister, we didn't mean it." She was also frightened when she thought of the good news hanging on the stone with the fire surrounding it. She almost became a stone burnt. "Woo, Grandma, I'm scared, I don't want to be roasted." Mrs. Li felt distressed and hugged her granddaughter as she walked all over the floor. "Fu Niu, don't cry, Grandma is here. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. We will never pay attention to you two stupid brothers again. Let's stay away from them." Everyone was rubbing their hands in distress, thinking about beating the two boys. They were also burned, and they set themselves on fire because they ran back to save their sister. "Why don't you give me a beating? I really don't feel relieved." At this time, the villagers also put out the fire and came over carrying their boys' ears. "How is Jia and Jia 11, is the injury serious?" Li Laoer glared at the two nephews and cursed, "They only burned a few blisters, but they scared Fu Niu." Fu Niu was placed on the stone and almost burned by the fire. The other naughty boys were quite loyal. They covered their ears and buttocks and loudly admitted their mistakes. "It's me who wants to roast the bird's eggs. I found the bird eggs. It was hot on the big rock. I carried Fu Niu up there." Everyone was so angry that they couldn't laugh or cry. "You are quite loyal and are rushing to admit your mistakes, right?" The village chief was so angry that he blew his beard and glared, "How many times have I told you, don't light a fire outside when the wind is strong? Where have your ears grown? The adults are so busy that they don't even have time to eat, but you are full and full. Naughty everywhere. Each household, please note to me that no food will be given to them in the evening, or tomorrow morning I will starve them for half a day to see if they still have the strength to cause trouble." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 160. Chapter 160. Don't be greedy. The villagers all responded quickly, "Yes, if you don't give them food, they will be honest after a few hungry meals." In order to survive, Everyone is like tired dogs, they don't even dare to eat to their fullest, for fear of running out of food. On the other hand, they know how to get into trouble if they can't help. Even the most soft-hearted old men and women did not help to plead for mercy. The few naughty boys had completely lost hope. Looking at the miserable state of Jia An's family happiness and the wilting good news, they all honestly shrank their heads. With the children making such a fuss, the adults are no longer in the mood to work. It is rare for them to finish work early, eat and sleep. Although Jiyan is an adult soul, it lives in a small body and the soul is much more fragile. The despair of being surrounded by fire and having no choice during the day gave her nightmares at night. In the end, Tao Hongying put her daughter on her belly and hugged her for the whole night. Hearing his mother's strong heartbeat and humming a lullaby, Jiyan finally fell asleep peacefully. Danjia and Jiaxi was groaning in pain because of her leg injury. Zhao Yuru and Jia Huan also stayed with them all night, because they could not use cold water even if they applied ointment. The mother and son used fans to fan themselves gently, trying to make the two boys feel more comfortable. At dawn, everyone in the Li family had dark circles under their eyes. The village chief braved the morning fog and came to visit. When he saw the Li family, he said, "You guys should rest at home for a day. We are digging holes and planting trees. There is no big work." Brother Li Lao and the others refused, so they ate hastily and insisted on following everyone up the mountain. Tao Hongying was originally going to clean up the riverbank with the women today. The sites for each family's yards were chosen there. They cleared them out early and quickly planted vegetables, so that they would not have to worry about cooking every time. But at this moment, she was not worried about her daughter, and she was also thinking about her son. She really wanted to break her heart in half. Mrs. Li coaxed her granddaughter to eat half a bowl of white porridge. Seeing that her granddaughter was still wilted, she said, "Hongying catches up with the mule cart and comes with me to a nearby village. Come back in exchange for some vegetables, and it's best to buy another hen, make some chicken soup for Fu Niu." Tao Hongying immediately agreed and went to hitch the mule cart. Dong Mei blamed herself for not following the good news last night, which frightened her, and now she had to help drive the car. Mrs. Li looked at her granddaughter's bright eyes and guessed her plan, so she said, "Don't worry about Dong Mei, we are just wandering around the village in front. Don't follow, stay home and let Yuru help, that's it." Dong Mei looked at Jiyan subconsciously, and when Jiyan nodded, she stepped back. Soon, the mule cart was hitched. The village chief yelled, "Hongying, bring more japonica rice, if you want to exchange it for convenience." Old Mrs. Li refused to take it. "No, bro, I have some money, so I will walk around and buy a chicken for the children to replenish their health." The Li family wanted to eat xiaozao, and it was really difficult to get food from the public house, so the village chief didn't insist anymore. Nowadays, everyone eats together. There are more people and less food. Of course, the food is not much better. Occasionally when a child is hungry or an old man has a birthday, each family will open a small stove, using the fine grain saved by each family. The Li family was subsidized by Mrs. Kui and Mr. Ye, and Mrs. Li, Jiyan, and even Uncle Zhao's sick patients also benefited from it. Everyone is not jealous, because every time Mrs. Kui, Mr. Wen, and Mr. Ye come, it is the Li family who entertain them with food. Everyone has a reputation in their heart, and everything is clear, but no one cares about it. This is the trust and friendship of working together to survive through thick and thin. Jiyan sat in her grandma's arms, listening to her talk to her, but her mind was busy in space. The radish, cabbage, sorghum, and millet that I had saved before finally got the chance to be used. There are also eggs, ducks and goose eggs that have been saved, and the overpopulated rabbits have quickly killed a few of them. The chicks hatched last year have now grown to 4 or 5 pounds. The hens are kept to lay eggs. The roosters are useless, so I caught 2 and contribute a big dish to the family table. In addition, there are still a lot of fresh green vegetables, a lot of meat left in the refrigerator, and the small fish in the fish pond have all grown up to the size of a palm. It's a pity that these still have to wait. Don't be greedy, don't be greedy. Ji-yin kept persuading him, and the mule cart slowly entered the nearby village. This village is called Big Banyan Tree and is home to more than 40 families and more than 200 people. The roads in the village are all dirt roads, but they are kept clean, and the fences in the yards of each house are also neat. It is obvious that the atmosphere in this village is good, at least the people are going through life and are diligent and responsible. Ji-yin stood in her grandma's arms, stretching her neck and looking around. As a result, the more I looked at her, the more satisfied I became. There is actually a family raising geese in this village. From now on, they will no longer be afraid of taking out goose eggs to irritate their eyes. She happily pointed to the yard of the goose farmer's house and shouted excitedly, "Goose, Grandma has geese." The old lady thought her granddaughter wanted to eat goose meat, so she immediately called her daughter-in-law, Hong-ying, "Go and ask if this family can sell us a goose. Let Fu-niu stew the goose for lunch." "Okay, Mother." Tao Hong-ying immediately stopped the mule cart, knocked on the door and went in to talk to the woman. This village is the closest to the gravel beach. Someone in the village had seen clearly what happened to the county magistrate's son, and the whole village knew about it. Nearly everyone in the village knows that those people on the gravel beach are not to be messed with. Now Tao Hong-ying comes in and wants to buy a goose, and the price given is pretty good. How dare the woman not sell it? Not only did she pluck the biggest one among the geese, she even gave him 2 goose eggs. Tao Hong-ying gave him a piece of silver worth 7 or 8 cents. Feeling that he had not treated him wrong, he picked up the goose by its neck and took the goose eggs to the mule cart. Ji-yin clapped her little hands happily. While her mother was holding the mule and her grandmother was tying the goose, she quickly put the goose eggs into the basket and closed the lid. The old lady turned around and saw it, subconsciously raised her hand to open it and took a look, but immediately put it back. The basket was full of white goose eggs, green duck eggs, and red eggs. Ji-yin smiled and hugged her grandma's neck. "Grandma, go home and eat custard." The old lady looked around and saw no one else. She pinched her granddaughter's face and asked in a low voice, "Fu-niu, what else do you want to eat?" He understood the good news and whispered in Grandma's ear, "Grandma, there are also radish, cabbage, sorghum, and millet. And, big fish." The old lady took a secret breath, and finally told her daughter-in-law, "Let's go, walk around the village for a while, and then go to another village." Tao Hong-ying didn't know what her mother and daughter were discussing, but she was happy because her daughter was so happy. She couldn't help but feel distressed when she thought of her daughter lying on her chest like a kitten last night. For a mother, nothing is more important than the health and happiness of her children. "Okay, Mother, sit tight." She whipped her whip and led the mule around the village. Every time he went to a corner or behind a firewood pile, out of sight, Ji-yin would go out and get something. Sometimes it's a bag of sorghum rice, sometimes it's dozens of cabbages, sometimes it's 2 baskets of radishes. Occasionally, when she meets the chatty women in the village, Ms. Lee will take the initiative to say something like, "We are fleeing from famine and have nothing to eat. We need to walk around in exchange for some whole grains and vegetables." The women guessed that the things in the car were bought in other villages, and they regretted it. They also have endless radish and green vegetables at home, and they see that fresh wild vegetables and side dishes from the yard are about to come out. If you can take it out, you can exchange it for some copper coins. So they all asked when the Lee family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law would come again, and they were much more enthusiastic than before. Ji-yin sat in the middle of the basket with a smile, like a little landlady, cheerful and cute. "From now on, you should take Grandma out for a walk often." 1,000 book reviews plus updates. 4 updates today will temporarily return to 3 updates a day for a while. Hwawa takes a rest and sorts out her thoughts. Darlings, don't all fatten up. Hwawa, Huawei still needs your daily support. Supports interaction reminders for chapter updates, 5-star book reviews, etc. End of this chapter.